ashamed to admit that that is his modus operandi. He asks the dumb questions and just doesn't understand things that everybody else understands so well that they don't ever think about these things that are constantly nagging at me. David Toulis, the man with the bow tie, the smartest guy with the bow tie, they say in Chattanooga, the blogger with the biggest pen. The pen is a 180-foot tower, more or less, on Signal Mountain that emits a major signal, emits a powerful, non-resistible, irrefutable signal, 92.7. And also from the same bit of architecture, the vertical real estate, there is 95.3 HD4. That's high definition channel 4, so rich in sound that if you graphed out all the different bits of noise that come at you at your ears, you would be able to see a separate line for the host's Adam's apple bobbing up and down in his throat there. A separate line for that individual sound that you ordinarily don't hear. But with high definition on channel 4 on the digital side, you will hear it there mixed with all the other material, all the other sounds, which end up being conversation, argument, fact, proof. And at the end of my brief spell every day here on the show, my conclusion, right? You have a sense of conclusion and finality. David Toulis, just before getting to leaving the house this morning, I sent an email to Arnold Stoltz. He is an attorney. And I did two things. I was wondering why I had delayed so long in giving notice to Red Bank Town. Red Bank in our county north, on the northwest side of Chattanooga. You might say Chattanooga's back shoulder. So I had a letter back to Attorney Stoltz saying, "Dear Mr. Stoltz, I would like to know whether Red Bank respects the right of the people to film its officers in public places. Let's see. Could you please inform me of the policy that restrains officers from intruding, stopping, blocking, or hindering the free exercise of this right?" It goes on to say, "Or if there is no policy explicitly stating that officers must respect this right," right? Because you don't have to have a policy stating that a right has to be respected, right? You have only a policy that prevents certain activities, right? In other words, you don't have to have it explicitly given that the officers of Red Bank, Tennessee, must respect the rights of my listener, that is to say you, to film their activities, right? Either in a restaurant, in a parking lot, on the side of the street, doing crime-solving work, saving lives, all these kinds of work, whether heroic or troubling, are open to report, and that is to say, report here on your most wonderful favorite radio station and press platform 92.7 Nooga Radio. The letter, you don't want to hear the letter, do you? You do? Well, it says, "Or if there is no policy explicitly stating that officers must respect this right, does the city recognize the First Amendment, generally speaking, finding that the constitutional provision is sufficient to stand for any written departmental policy?" So you see what I mean? If you have a First Amendment, you don't have to have a First Amendment policy in your police department. You just don't have to have that. So I'm asking the city attorney, who's hired and on a retainer. So this might be getting that email might create a billable half hour for the taxpayers in Red Bank. Filming police is in public is a God-given. Here's where I get on my high horse here on your behalf, right? The high horse that you too should take. God-given, constitutionally guaranteed, inherent, and unalienable right. I like that phrase. That phrasing seems to encompass all the elements of what God, in his mercy, has given us, something that very few of us know how to defend, and I think a few understand and thank him for. Of every citizen of the United States and of Tennessee, period, according to the ACLU. And then I have a quote from the left, you could say, "Taking photographs and video of things that are plainly visible in public spaces is a constitutional right, and that includes transportation facilities, the outside of federal buildings, and police and other government officials carrying out their duties. Unfortunately, law enforcement officers have been known," I tell Arnold Stoltz, city attorney, have been known to ask people to stop. Do they? Do they? Taking photographs of public places. Those who fail to comply have sometimes been harassed, detained, and arrested. Other people have ended up in FBI databases for taking innocuous photographs of public places. The right of citizens to record the police is a critical check and balance. It creates an independent record of what took place in a particular incident, one that is free from accusations of bias, lying, or faulty memory. It is no accident that some of the most high-profile cases of police misconduct have involved video and audio records. I would appreciate your response to this query. Respectfully, David Toulis. So that is what I do. That was one of two letters sent to Mr. Stultz, the attorney for Red Bank. The other, well, yeah, the other is administrative notice. I finally said, okay, I haven't done everybody in the area on your behalf, right? So I'm sending transportation administrative notice to the city of Red Bank. Attached is an administrative notice regarding Tennessee's transportation statute and the federal transportation law, both of which are binding upon the city of Red Bank as restated herein. And I think that part, as restated herein, sort of defines my goal as a member of the press. My goal in reporting on the law, the law is pretty interesting. And if we believe our left-wing judiciary, the law is a constantly changing realm, right? And things are not fixed. They're constantly evolving. New rights are emerging. Old rights are fading, right? We make them fade by police action, by the necessities of the industrial political superstate. And so it's changing. And so I view that the law is news, right? The law is news. And the interaction between a particular state actor bound by law at some point and the law itself, that is a story. And so if you go to Nuganomics.com, you'll find a treasure trove of analysis. And I suggest you not be left out. You should subscribe to Nuganomics.com. It has a tiny following. And that's because really very few people matter. Okay, very few people know that here we have a continuing analyses of these problems of liberty oppressed and defying tyranny, and so they understand that I have my optic on the problem. Please acknowledge your receipt of this notice. I tell Arnold Stultz respectfully. So 2 emails that went out. I thought, well, since I'm following up on my audit of the town, as I'm building a report about its police department policies, I'm going to be out there taking photographs, and I'll have maybe you, my listener. There's only you. Okay, only you can help me in this project. There's no one else who can do it. You live in Red Bank. You care about Red Bank, and you owe it to me, your host here, to call me and say, David, I'm going to help you on this project. So there's nobody else out there. Okay, there are not thousands of calls coming into me when I extend that invitation. There's just one person, and that's you in Red Bank. And we'll work on this together. Like I said, I'm getting together a report about the department's requirements, what tells its officers, how it views its job, whether it be search and seizure, whether it be checkpoints, whether it be unmarked cars, whether it be arrest, whether it be transportation enforcement. All of these are in my view. What about cavity searches? What do you think about a Red Bank police officer looking into your cavities, right? Think about that. Is that under a policy? Well, it is, and I'm going to tell you what that policy is, but you're not going to be able to read that without being a subscriber to Nuganomics.com. 800-8949 is the number, 800-8949. And I really appreciate that you, my listener, care about these issues, and I'd say we should firm up our relationship. And that would be by subscription. It's a free thing. Being as a blogger with the biggest pen, I write gratis. There's no money. There's no thousands of dollars flowing at me because of my huge traffic writing about Chattanooga and the duty that we have to defend our liberties and to prosper our local economy, right? That's all I'm about, prospering local economy. And when I see police abuse, when I see police executions of, let's say, the woman in Saudi Daisy, I think, these have untold effects on the spirit, on the confidence of the people here. How do we measure what a police killing does? How do we measure what the treatment of someone like Constance Giles does to her and her family? She calls 911, living in Cohutta, Georgia, Whitfield County, and a very bold and courageous officer arrests her because Constance says, "I'm not talking to you, and I'm done with this interview." That is called obstruction under a wicked law in Georgia, the obstruction statute, which Tennessee's beats by a mile. Right? Tennessee's obstruction statute is called resisting statute, is many times better written. We have, I guess, just have better writers in Tennessee. Yeah, the Georgia statute, it's 1610-24, obstructing or hindering law enforcement. Listen to this. It says a person who knowingly and willfully obstructs or hinders any law enforcement officer in the lawful discharge of his official duties is guilty of a misdemeanor. That is so open-ended. So what if a cop demands without a warrant that I open my door and let him in? Well, what if I say, no, show me your warrant, or no, go and get a warrant? Well, that, of course, I don't think could be construed as an obstruction. But think of all the kinds of things where officers are delayed and impeded, right? Obstructing and hindering, all the things that not answering quickly enough, not talking at a rapid enough pace for the hasty officer who's got to get on to the next call, right? And you suddenly are charged with that because you're not doing what this good soul wants of you, and you are insisting on your rights. You're insisting, for example, that you're not involved in transportation. You're involved in private use of the roads, perhaps, right? Some cranky person like me, I'm just going to be charged with obstruction. So that's what you face in that state. And I'm concerned about that, and I want you to be concerned about it too. And I think one slight favor I might do for maybe not you, but maybe for other people, is to get them to realize that God has something to say about all these things. Though I'm not a preacher, of course, and I probably give insufficient attention to the biblical law, I would say that many of the things that we point out here are violative of a just social order which God ordains. God ordains a just social order and promises victory in the end, a victory not just individuals, but a victory in society as a whole. There's that passage in Isaiah, maybe chapter 7, that says of the increase of his government there shall be no end. So we know that over time, evil things such as misapplication of Title 55 in Tennessee will come to an end. They will have to come to an end maybe in the future when there may not be a state of Tennessee, but there may be some other organization of people in this part of the country or in this part of the continent. Tennessee may not always be here. And so those bodies, those groupings, those societies that replace Tennessee in the out years, 200 years from now, 300 years from now, may be more just. They may not have the same kind of laws we have now. And they'll read back on histories of Chattanooga, Tennessee, and say, how could people have lived back then? How could people who are professing Christians not have raised a stink about the things that David Toulis is raising a stink about? There was only one guy who seemed to keep saying the same thing, and that was that you're by your own law, by Tennessee's own law, its people are violating the rights of the people. The people in government are violating the law that controls them, right? That's the argument that I'm making, and that Arnold Stoltz, probably on another billable hour or two, is going to be reviewing on behalf of the Red Bank City Commission and the mayor of Red Bank. It's a 20-page analysis. It's called Transportation Administrative Notice. And I have that there because I want to forestall abuse and to have representatives of the law enforcement, as they're called, to respect the limits of the operative statute. The statute operates on transportation, and it does not operate on private users. And the law is unmistakable about this point. And even cases that are decided against liberty and against the constitutional right of travel, even those very cases, you have admissions of the fact, the basic fact being that transportation is a category of travel. Travel is what you do, my private listener, when you go about in your minivan or your sedan to work or to play or to church or to go see your mother at the nursing home or to bring groceries to a widow as part of Widow's Harvest Ministries. All that's just private travel. That's not subject to regulation. And yet not a single jurisdiction, not a single municipal corporation or a single county and the governor's office are not yet moving in the right direction. So it's going to take a little bit of litigation aimed at a particular officer or particular deputy or trooper that will make that ball start rolling. So we're just trying to lubricate the marketplace here, and it's a loco-centric reform, right? It starts locally wherever the notice is given. There is a doctrine of notice. I'm finishing up a paper on that, the Tennessee case law on the rules of notice and the effect of notice. Notice is a very powerful medium for reform. Whether it's police tactics, and this is a kind of police tactic reform that I'm saying is required in the law, and it's unmistakable. And so Arnold Stoltz is going to be looking at that today, the attorney at Red Bank. And of course, 6 months out, I'll be doing an open records request to find out all non-privileged communication between him and the city commission and the chief of police, Robert Simpson, to find out if they're taking it seriously. Because what happens you want to know how this works? Well, in a nutshell, notice, especially if it's notice of law, changes the relationship between the recipient and his doings. Okay, so if you receive a notice of law, what you're told is that here's the law and you have to obey it. Now, previous to getting the notice, you could have disobeyed the law, carelessly disregarded it because you didn't know and you didn't intend to oppress the citizen against whom you are using that law to construct your prison industrial complex, right? You have to keep that prison industrial complex going. And so you have to have people constantly under arrest to make that thing justify the expense of it. And so notice prevents the state actor, the individual officer or deputy, from saying, I didn't know and I didn't mean to. Because with notice, legal notice, you can't use that defense. You can't avoid the argument by the plaintiff that you acted in ignorance and without intent. You acted, in other words, in bad faith. And bad faith is just poison. Legally, it's the worst kind of poison you could ever be accused of. Remember Great Benefits Corporation in the Rainmaker movie? Matt Damon's one of his early movies. That's a great story about bad faith. Bad faith denial of insurance claims. And the young lawyer, of course, wins the case and brings mercy upon the dead man's family. And of course, Great Benefits filed for bankruptcy. So no one got anything, apparently, in that John Grisham story. Well, this is David Toulis, and my job here is really about notice, giving people notice of what's true and right and good. And I'm highly optimistic, and I perhaps haven't given really much theological basis for that, but that's okay. We're not. You should be getting that in church, and if you're not getting that in church, I'm really sorry that you're not. If you're a practicing Christian, you don't hear you get nothing that should fuel your optimism about conquest. Not conquest for Christ. Okay, that we're talking here about religion. Okay, the Christian will understand that, but conquest in the large and maybe in the smaller sense, conquest of liberty and freedom over tyranny and false claims against private, non-criminal, innocent, harmless people. Right. That's my goal, is to defend the non-criminal person, the innocent, harmless person in business, who's crossing borders, who's relocating his family to a new country, who is doing something that's not harming anyone, but actually providing service after service. Look at all the private businesses, the small businesses in the Chattanooga area. They're all there to make a profit for sure, but they want to be successful with you, the customer, right? That's what we're all about here at News Radio. We are the station for local economy and free markets. And next we have the nation's greatest talk show with a national perspective. And that is Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity, just ahead, we've got CBS News. We are a powerhouse. Why? Because we're making you powerful with the news and insight and information. Sean Hannity next. This is David Schultz. Love your neighbor and buy local. Love your neighbor, buy local. Call me. I'll be here tomorrow.
3, 2, 1.
Chattanooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. 92.7 FM's news now.
A TVA contractor was cited for allegedly exposing workers to dangerous electric